Hi Sonoma County, it is Tuesday, October 20th, and I'm in Belgrade, Serbia, where I've been since last Friday, so rounding out what is about just over 4 days here in Serbia. And what an interesting place to be. I really wasn't sure what to expect, being in the Balkans for really the first time, and in a place that has been tattered and torn by war, but obviously rebuilt, or is in the process of being rebuilt as well. And so I think, I'm staying kind of in the heart of downtown Belgrade, and it's actually quite modern. If you're into shopping at all, you'd recognize Zara and H&M and Converse and a lot of what would be sort of popular stores and restaurants and cafes, and a lot of dance clubs and nightlife and wine bars that have kind of populated the area. So it's also quite modern, but mixed into all of this are still buildings that have been left and not reconstructed after the NATO's bombings here in 1999. So as you drive around, you'll see a building that's completely destroyed, but still standing somewhat, right next to what would be a new building or, a popular restaurant or government building. So it's really kind of an interesting place. It's a place that's actually quite poor, so the economy is not doing very well here. That part hasn't really recovered. And so we spent the last couple of days and having a lot of different meetings here to learn more about Serbia, Belgrade, and just sort of kind of the whole what's going on in the situation in Eastern Europe in general. So conversations, and I think the biggest part of the conversation is centered around Serbia's desire to be a part of the EU, so their path to be part of the EU. And we actually got to meet with a woman who is the head negotiator for this path to the EU, and so they have 35 chapters of sort of different areas that they have to focus on, everything from the justice system to food safety and quality, to roads and infrastructure, to trade barriers. So they're actually starting kind of with a big one actually, to get back to that. A big one is actually on the environment, and so what do they do with their waste, their energy efficiency, etc. So they've actually started kind of with the 35th chapter and are working their way backwards. And I think, as we've talked to a lot of people throughout the last couple of days, really the sentiment is this idea of being able to meet the standards of the EU will be such a positive thing for Serbia that it almost doesn't matter what the end result is, whether they get that consensus vote to become a part of the EU or not. And so we did get to spend time in the mayor's office today. I was at Parliament, and really interesting here for the ministers in Parliament, they actually have to, every slate has to have 1/3 of the people running for office have to be women. And so at one point today I was in a room and it was 14 women and 2 men, and we were just talking about women here, and women in political positions and women in kind of power here. And it's just very fascinating because on the one hand, 1/3 of these women are in Parliament, yet I think the rest of the society is not really caught up. We mentioned this concept of work-life balance. Is that something, can women have it all here? Is that something that's even talked about? And it's something they think about, but it's such a almost foreign concept because they're still sort of fighting just to have that position, let alone sort of working through what that means for their role in the home and the role as having kind of a true partnership with men, and can they can they still have a family and be successful in work, or are there those trade-offs? And so it was a really interesting dialogue. And I think the big thing here is there really doesn't seem, as someone said, Serbia is a place filled with people who have a general perspective that the glass is always half empty, and whether that's just all of the state of sadness they've been through, kind of the overturning of their government, kind of that revolution that they went through, whatever it is, they haven't really been able to sort of get into a place of hope. And they talk a lot about the brain drain of the people that do have talent, that are educated, are all leaving Serbia to take jobs somewhere else, so not actually contributing back to the economy and the success here, the innovation or entrepreneurship here. And so it's a real problem, and it's not unlike some of the situations we've heard in other places. Like, how do you really motivate change? How do you motivate change in any sort of situation, but let alone in a country in Eastern Europe that has really been through so much and is quite poor? So It's been an interesting kind of dichotomy as part of my trip. Tomorrow I head to Paris, where it looks very different. My trip has been bookended by Brussels and Paris, and in between you have this kind of really interesting, thriving yet social safety net, social welfare net of Copenhagen, to Rome, which is just a big center, big city center of Italy, but also really dealing with an economic crisis and a brain drain. And then you come to Serbia, which has just frankly been wrecked and is trying to still recover from everything it's been through. And so my fellowship continues. It's been a really interesting experience. I've learned so much, and just sort of how you think about things, and how a society recovers, how it motivates innovation and change and reform, and how do you overcome kind of that feeling of what could be hopelessness. So lots of good lessons to bring back. I frankly not sure how long it will take me to process everything I've seen and heard and learned over the past couple of weeks, but it's been a fantastic experience. So hope you're all doing well back home, and I will talk to you again from Paris.